On June 4, 1944, at 11:09 a.m., Lieutenant Commander Means Johnston aboard the destroyer escort Shatala, located approximately 150 miles west of Rio de Janeiro in French West Africa, pressed his headphones tightly to his ears. He was trying to make sense of a faint metallic sound that echoed through the Atlantic Ocean depths, a sound that would set off an unprecedented event in American naval history since 1815. This daring act of deliberate non-compliance would earn Johnston both the highest military accolades and the risk of facing charges from the Chief of Naval Operations himself. The sonar contact was just 800 yards away, a distance so close that it made proper arming of depth charges impossible before reaching their target. Johnston understood what his training demanded: detect, attack, destroy without hesitation. Yet, Captain Daniel Vincent Gallery, who stood on the bridge of the escort carrier Guadalcanal as the leader of Task Group 22 3 weeks preparing his crew for an operation that defied all naval warfare protocols. At 42 years old and a former Olympic wrestler from Chicago, Gallery had already sunk 3 U-boats in just 4 months. However, he began to see sinking submarines as squandering valuable intelligence. On April 9, 1944, his task group had engaged U-505 and sent it to the bottom after an intense battle. As the submarine surfaced and its crew abandoned ship, Gallery witnessed something that troubled him deeply: the loss of crucial intelligence when the submarine sank, including codebooks, cipher machines, and tactical charts. That night, he decided on a course that could either transform naval warfare or jeopardize his career. He would capture the next U-boat intact instead of destroying it. The concept he introduced was so daring that when he initially shared it with his destroyer captains, they doubted its seriousness, believing him to be jesting. No United States naval force had conducted a boarding and capture operation at sea since the War of 1812. Was equipped with scuttling charges intended to destroy the vessel if capture appeared imminent. Any boarding team would risk entering an explosive environment. Nevertheless, Gallery undertook something unprecedented by assembling specialized boarding teams from volunteers across his task group. For weeks, these teams trained in secret, studying captured German manuals and memorizing locations of valves, electrical systems, and scuttling charges. He also provided them with unique tools, pumps, and emergency repair equipment. His men thought their captain had gone mad. They were about to find out that they were part of a high-stakes game beyond their imagination. The submarine ascending from the depths was U-505 Cabe, commanded by Owalutan and Harold Lang, a 40-year-old veteran brought in specifically to boost morale on what was considered the most ill-fated boat in the German Navy. Since its commissioning in August 1941, U-505 had been plagued with misfortunes. The previous commander, Peter Jack, took his own life during a depth charge attack, becoming the only submarine commander to commit suicide under combat conditions. Technical issues marred every patrol, and the crew believed their vessel was cursed. Lang spent 6 months trying to restore confidence in the demoralized crew. He succeeded in getting the troubled boat back into fighting condition, but on this patrol, everything went awry once more. They were running low on battery power, their detection equipment was failing, and they sailed directly into an American hunter-killer group without realizing it. At 11:10, Chatelaine launched her Hedgehog mortars, sending 24 projectiles arching through the air and plunging into the ocean in a circular formation. Unlike depth charges, which explode on contact with the seafloor, Hedgehogs detonate only upon hitting their targets. Chatelaine then deployed a series of shallow detonation depth charges. Inside U-505, the shockwaves from the blasts hurled sailors against bulkheads and shattered gauges. The submarine began to list violently, her bow tilting upwards at an impossible angle. In the engine room, high-pressure valves ruptured, spewing oil and seawater everywhere. The rudder jammed in a fixed position, causing the boat to spiral out of control. Machinist Matanzgavala, who was thrown from his station, watched helplessly as the depth gauge spun wildly. U-505 was experiencing an uncontrolled ascent with no way to halt it. Lieutenant Commander Lang ordered the ballast tanks blown in a futile attempt to regain control. They had no choice but to surface. When U-505 breached the waves at 11:16, just under 600 yards from Shadowland, Lang made a decision that would haunt him for life. Believing his submarine was fatally damaged and flooding aft compartments, he ordered his crew to abandon ship. He instructed them to set scuttling charges and open sea valves to destroy the codebooks. However, events unfolded too quickly. As sailors scrambled up the conning tower ladder, American gunfire erupted from 3 destroyers, and Wildcat aircraft from Guadalcanal dove overhead, their 50-caliber machine guns raking the water around the submarine. Injured by shrapnel to his leg, Lang was assisted overboard by his executive officer amid the chaos and fear of abandonment. Bullets whizzed overhead, and planes roared past as the destruction process remained incomplete. Some explosives were placed but not armed, valves were opened but not locked, and codebooks were tossed into the sea, while the most sensitive documents stayed on board. This was the critical moment Gallery had anticipated. From Guadalcanal's bridge, he initiated communication with the ship's radio, issuing a command that hadn't been heard by an American naval officer in over a century, a way all boarding parties repeated for emphasis. He then ordered, "Board and take that submarine." On the destroyer escort Pillsbury, Lieutenant Junior Grade Albert Leroy David gathered his 8-man team. Beyond being an ordinary officer, David had served since 1919, rising through the ranks from enlisted status to where he was now due to determination and skill. He understood that this mission could very well be a suicide operation. According to German submarine protocol, multiple scuttling charges would have been strategically placed throughout the vessel. If any were correctly armed, entering the submarine would lead to its immediate destruction. At 11:22, the whaleboat from Pillsbury launched into the churning Atlantic, heading towards the circling U-505. Despite her jammed rudder causing erratic circular movements and waves splashing over her deck, she was still moving at a speed of 5 or 6 knots. David's team had to time their approach meticulously since there would be no assistance from the crew for securing lines or stopping the engines. David made a choice that would later earn him the Medal of Honor when he collided with the steel hull. Without pausing, he jumped onto the slick deck and dashed toward the conning tower. Radioman Second Class Stanley Whitawalk and Torpedoman Third Class Arthur Nispel followed closely behind as the rest of the boarding party grappled to secure their boat to the circling submarine. David plunged into the darkened conning tower where the emergency lights had failed, stepping into ankle-deep water that made movement precarious due to the submarine's tilt. The oppressive odor immediately hit him, a vile blend of diesel fuel, battery acid, human perspiration, and fear. Inside, temperatures exceeded 95 degrees, the air thick with humidity from flooded compartments. Unbeknownst to David, he had an unexpected ally in Ewald Felix, a German sailor who delayed abandoning ship. In those final moments before fleeing, Felix discreetly shut several vital valves, actions that kept the submarine afloat despite severe damage. As David's flashlight pierced the darkness, it revealed a chaotic scene, water gushing from numerous ruptures and the hum of electrical motors mixed with escaping air. Hidden somewhere among the pipes and machinery were 14 demolition charges. Unknown to David, only one was still armed and would remain undetected until days later when its timer mysteriously failed. Through the open hatch, they could hear their boat crew shouting warnings that they were drifting away and losing contact with the moving submarine. David faced a critical decision: retreat to safety or proceed further into what could become a perilous situation. He opted for the latter and ventured deeper through the control room. There, he encountered his first significant challenge. The watertight door leading to the forward compartments was shut tight. If the compartments were flooded, opening the door would cause the submarine to sink immediately. David placed his ear against the cold metal surface, straining to hear any signs of water rushing in, but detected none. He then turned the heavy wheel with all his might, fighting against the immense pressure difference. The door creaked open, revealing the officers' quarters. Stopping the flooding became his primary objective. In the engine room, he identified the main sea strainer, an 8-inch valve that was letting thousands of gallons of water pour in every minute. With Nispel's assistance, they were able to close it, reducing the influx to a more controllable rate. However, this was only the start of their challenges. Across the submarine, numerous smaller valves remained open, each contributing to the gradual sinking of U-55. Meanwhile, What of U Dowyak had reached the radio room and made an astonishing discovery. The space was brimming with valuable intelligence that German protocols required be destroyed within 30 seconds upon abandoning ship. Yet, in the confusion and chaos of the attack, the radio operator had fled without completing these procedures. The Germans had left so hastily that everything remained bogged. On the table lay an intact Enigma machine, its rotors still set to the day's encryption settings. This wasn't an ordinary puzzle. It involved a naval variant of the M4 machine, which the Allies found difficult to decipher consistently. Among the cipher materials were the special coordinate code revealing precise patrol areas for U-boats, officer settings, a short weather code book, and a short signal book. The most astonishing find was the large RAM tables set to take effect in July and August. W. Dyack meticulously collected each document, his hands trembling as he grasped their significance. A single water-soaked page could potentially cost thousands of Allied lives. He used waterproof canvas bags that Commander Gallery had insisted on despite skepticism from his officers about their usefulness. This foresight would preserve the documents essential for winning the Battle of the Atlantic. Meanwhile, gunner's mate First Class Chester McCoskey and motor machinist's mate First Class Zenon Lukosius made their way to the engine room. The scene they encountered was dire. The diesel engines were still operational, their thunderous noise drowning out any attempts at communication. Water spewed from ruptured cooling lines, creating a scalding mist that burned exposed skin. The deck plates were slick with a toxic mix of diesel fuel, lubricating oil, and seawater, making each step perilous. Additional boarding parties arrived from Guadalcanal and other destroyers. Commander Earl Troino, the chief engineer of Guadalcanal, brought pumps and emergency equipment to the flooded engine room. Under impossible conditions, Troino managed a feat that seemed unlikely. He disconnected U-505's diesel engines from her electric motors, while keeping the motors connected to the propeller shafts. As Guadalcanal began towing the submarine, the propellers would spin, turning the motors into generators, charging the batteries needed for the submarine's pumps. It was brilliant engineering in an extreme situation. Gallery understood that the real battle had only just begun. Maintaining the secrecy of this capture was crucial. Should Germany discover that U-505 had been seized rather than destroyed, they would promptly alter all their codes. This development could jeopardize the entire ultra-intelligence operation and undermine the Allies' capability to decipher German communications just days before the Normandy invasion. To prevent any leaks, Captain Daniel Gallery implemented the most stringent security measures ever seen in naval history. Every one of the 3,000 sailors involved in Task Group 22-3 took an oath of absolute secrecy, and all mail was censored. Shore leave was cancelled, and anyone who mentioned the capture faced court-martial proceedings. The 58 surviving German prisoners were informed they would be taken to Casablanca, but were instead sent to a secret prison camp in Louisiana, where they remained isolated throughout the rest of the war, contrary to the Geneva Convention. Their families were told their loved ones had perished at sea. The codebooks were swiftly flown to Bletchley Park in England, where they greatly benefited Allied codebreakers during the war's final year. However, Gallery's triumph quickly turned into a bureaucratic ordeal when news reached Washington. Admiral Ernest Joseph King, Chief of Naval Operations and arguably the most influential figure in the U.S. Navy, was livid. King viewed Gallery's actions as a publicity stunt that endangered the entire ultra-secret operation. The British, who had previously sunk captured submarines to avoid arousing German suspicion, following seizures of U-110 in 1941 and U-5055s in 1942, were equally outraged by Gallery's decision to tow U-55 across the Atlantic openly. King seriously contemplated court-martialing Gallery for recklessly endangering Allied intelligence operations through grandstanding. The secret nature of Gallery's mission prevented its exposure and potential disgrace. The Germans remained unaware of U-505's capture throughout. Her crew was listed as missing, presumed dead, while the submarine was officially recorded as lost with all hands in the Atlantic. The intelligence gained from this operation surpassed even the most optimistic expectations. With the coordinate code, Allied forces could reroute convoys to avoid known submarine patrol areas with unprecedented accuracy. Additionally, an acoustic torpedo recovered from U-505's deck revealed advanced German weapon technology, enabling the Allies to swiftly develop countermeasures. U-505 herself served as a floating laboratory where American engineers studied German innovations that were later incorporated into post-war submarines. Lieutenant Albert David was awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions during the capture of U-505, making him the sole recipient from the Atlantic Fleet in World War II. However, he never wore this prestigious medal, as he passed away due to a heart attack on September 17, 1945, at age 43, just over a year after his heroic act. President Harry Truman presented the medal to David's widow the following month. The experiences of U-556 crew were equally notable. They were held in Camp Ruston, Louisiana, under highly restrictive conditions. Red Cross visits and male privileges were denied, and they remained isolated from other prisoners throughout their stay. Initially designed for members of the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, the camp had been hastily converted to accommodate German prisoners captured during Rommel's Africa campaign. However, the crew of U-505 was treated differently. They weren't just prisoners, they were secrets that needed strict protection. The 5 surviving crew members were confined in a specially designated compound surrounded by an additional fence and barbed wire. Guard duty was handled by Navy personnel who did not speak German to ensure complete isolation. The camp commandant remained unaware of the true reasons behind the extreme treatment meted out to these specific prisoners. A fabricated explanation stated that they were suspected war criminals awaiting a thorough investigation. Hans Gobler, the machinist who endured an uncontrolled ascent, later recounted in his memoirs the psychological torment they faced during their captivity. "We were ghosts," he wrote, noting that their families had been informed of their deaths. Meanwhile, other German prisoners housed in the main camp received mail, Red Cross parcels, and even visits from clergy, while they received nothing at all. They existed in a void, neither acknowledged as alive nor declared dead. Interrogations were frequent, but the questioning focused on technical details about their vessel rather than military operations, leaving them perplexed. Prisoners' notebooks were confiscated and examined thoroughly, and even their chess games were monitored for potential coded messages. Obolant Harold Lang suffered a more severe isolation during his captivity. Initially hospitalized for his leg injury, he remained under constant guard with no medical staff allowed to converse beyond necessary medical exchanges. For 6 months, he believed himself the only survivor of his crew. The psychological toll was immense. In letters written after the war, Lang described contemplating suicide due to a profound sense of failure for surviving when his comrades had perished. Reality, however, proved even more intricate. American intelligence officials exploited Lang's solitary confinement to gather information. By managing the flow of data he received, they could confirm intelligence obtained through other channels. When Langer was eventually informed that his crew had survived, his immense relief prompted him to become unusually cooperative and divulge technical insights about German submarine operations, details he might have withheld otherwise. Meanwhile, the prisoners fashioned their own world within the camp. They established classes covering subjects ranging from English to advanced mathematics. They also formed an orchestra using instruments crafted from Red Cross packages and scrap materials. Additionally, they circulated a clandestine newspaper among the barracks, written by hand and distributed secretly, which helped maintain morale through dark humor about their ghostly status. One cartoon depicted a skeleton in a U-boat uniform with the caption, "The Geneva Convention was consistently disregarded to keep the operation under wraps. According to international law, prisoners' names were supposed to be reported to the International Red Cross within weeks of capture, allowing families to receive updates and care packages. However, this never happened for the crew of U-505. Their identities remained undisclosed, and their loved ones received no official word about them." In Germany, memorial services were held for those presumed lost at sea. Wives mourned as widows unaware that their husbands were still alive, while children grew up believing their fathers had died heroically in battle. The isolation inflicted severe psychological harm. 3 prisoners attempted suicide, and several others suffered from what camp psychiatrists termed acute depressive episodes. One young sailor devoted several hours daily to writing letters to his girlfriend that could never be dispatched, filling notebooks with passionate declarations and visions of a shared future. The narrative took an unexpected twist 2 decades later when Gallery, who had become a rear admiral by then, invited Lang to Chicago for the 20th anniversary celebration commemorating the capture. This gathering was held at the Museum of Science and Industry where U-505 was displayed as a permanent exhibit. The reunion was meticulously arranged by Gallery, who located Lange through German naval veteran networks. Initially hesitant due to painful memories and deep-seated shame over losing his boat, Lang, now working as a harbor pilot in Hamburg, eventually accepted the invitation when Gallery penned heartfelt letters emphasizing survival rather than defeat and honor instead of disgrace in dire situations. Last moments aboard U-505, Lange's narrative shed light on aspects American investigators had overlooked. It revealed that Peter Jack's suicide deeply traumatized the crew, prompting many to request transfers which were denied. Believing their vessel was cursed and death inevitable, several sailors stopped writing home as they felt certain they would never return. Lang's account depicted the moment of attack with vivid detail. "We were having lunch potato soup. The same meal we had for 3 days because our refrigeration unit failed. When the first explosion hit, it sent the soup pot flying across the compartment, scalding the cook. Men were thrown against machinery with such violent force that 3 sustained broken ribs. The boat rose at a 70-degree angle, causing everything not secured to fly forward. I saw our spare torpedoes break free from their chains. 6,000 pounds of steel and explosives slid toward the forward bulkhead." The depth charge attack had inflicted more damage than the Americans realized. The main ballast tank vents were stuck open, preventing control over the boat's depth. The stern planes were locked in a maximum dive position, while the compass spun ineffectively. Most critically, there was a hairline fracture near frame 50 of the pressure hull, allowing water to seep in at increasing pressure. Lange understood that his submarine had mere minutes before experiencing catastrophic implosion. His decision to surface an abandoned ship, Lang explained during their reunion with Gallery, was not driven by panic but by careful consideration. "I could have died alongside my vessel, fulfilling the romantic notion of a captain's duty, or I could choose to save these boys' lives. I chose life. There is no honor in needlessly sacrificing one's life." In a touching moment, Gallery returned Lange's binoculars, which he had kept as a war trophy, bringing tears to the elderly submarine commander's eyes. However, Gallery also revealed something else, a personal diary belonging to Lang that was found concealed behind a pipe in the captain's cabin, which he had never reported to Navy intelligence. "I went through it. Each page from the Gallery left an impact on me. It allowed me to see that you were not monsters but merely individuals performing your duties as you understood them. I have the individuals performing your duties as you understood them." Langanger opened up the water-stained book, reading his reflections penned 2 decades ago. "My hands tremble as I jot this down. We've been at sea for 40 days with no communication from base for the past 2 weeks. The crew is starting to crack under pressure. Yesterday, Seaman Craw was found weeping in the torpedo room. He hadn't received any mail from home in 6 months and feared his family believed him deceased. Maybe they are correct. Perhaps none of us truly survive here anymore, just waiting for the sea to take its toll on us all. Once adversaries who sought each other's demise, Lang revealed to reporters that we now consider one another friends. The event that nearly ruined Galler's career has transformed into a symbol of reconciliation. What was meant to be destroyed became a memorial acknowledging war's intricacies, where enemies can become allies, defiance can turn into valor, and capturing rather than killing can rewrite history. The coordinate code alone was credited with saving numerous merchant ships and thousands of lives during the final year of the conflict. The insight into German submarine operations, gleaned from U-505, had a lasting impact on American submarine design for decades. Admiral Karl Donitz, who commanded Germany's submarine fleet, remained unaware that one of his submarines had been captured. In his post-war memoirs, he expressed bewilderment at how the Allies seemed to predict U-boat movements with remarkable precision in the last year of the war. The answer lay in a converted warehouse in Bermuda, where American intelligence officers spent months meticulously extracting every secret from U-505. Among the 588 surviving German sailors who were aboard during the capture, many experienced a significant transformation, transitioning from enemy combatants to museum exhibits. Several corresponded with their former American captors after the war, and some emigrated to the United States in the 1950s. The machinist Hans Gobela, who had witnessed his submarine's uncontrolled descent, authored a best-selling book about his experiences in Germany and dedicated it to the American sailors who saved his life. Members of the boarding party became naval celebrities despite the public remaining unaware of their exploits until after the war. Arthur Niespel and Stanley W. Dyack were awarded Navy Crosses, while the other 6 boarders received Silver Stars. They understood that true victory was not just survival, but emerging alive from a highly dangerous situation. By capturing rather than sinking U-505, Gallery defied naval convention, a stance that would shape his entire post-war career. His decision to capture the submarine instead of destroying it placed him in opposition to traditional naval thinking and set a precedent for much of his future service. He authored several books about the event, with each publication carefully vetted by Navy censors to safeguard classified intelligence techniques. His debut book, Clear the Decks, which was published in 1951, soared to bestseller status but enraged Admiral King, who never forgave Gallery for jeopardizing Ultra. However, Gallery's redemption came from an unforeseen quarter. In 1974, when British intelligence declassified parts of the Ultra program, historians uncovered evidence that Gallery's capture had actually bolstered, rather than endangered, Allied code-breaking efforts. Documents recovered from U-55 provided critical validation for decrypts that were previously uncertain to British intelligence. Several German naval codes that Bletchley Park had only partially cracked became fully understood thanks to the comprehensive code library aboard U-55. Alan Turing, the mastermind behind much of Britain's code-breaking achievements, mentioned in a still-classified 1944 memo, while the American capture was initially alarming, it has supplied invaluable confirmation for our theoretical work. We now have irrefutable evidence of German encoding procedures that we had only guessed at. Gallery later became an advocate for naval aviation and a critic of defense cuts, positions that earned him adversaries in Washington. His participation in the Revolt of the Admirals, a political struggle over the future of naval aviation, prevented his promotion to vice admiral. When the Secretary of Defense proposed eliminating aircraft carriers in favor of long-range bombers, Gallery leaked classified information to journalists demonstrating the vulnerability of bomber formations to submarine-launched guided missiles, technology discovered aboard captured German ships like U-505. This leak halted his career advancement but safeguarded naval aviation. President Truman privately acknowledged, "You're right, Dan," at a White House reception, adding, "But being correct and getting promoted are 2 different things in this town." Yet Gallery never regretted capturing U-505. In his autobiography, 8 Bells and All's Well, he detailed the extent of his preparation for the mission. He had studied every after-action report from British submarine captures. He had studied it, knowing that the British captured U-110 in 1941 but kept it secret even from their American allies. Gallery suspected they had seized code materials that gave them an advantage they were not sharing with their partners. "My desire was for America to experience an intelligence coup of its own." Gallery had started planning for capturing a submarine several months prior to the June 4th event. He obtained specialized equipment under deceptive claims. Portable pumps were supposedly intended for damage control exercises, while waterproof document bags were purportedly needed for preserving ship logs during abandoned ship drills. Canvas patches and wooden plugs, standard damage control supplies, coincidentally matched the specifications of German submarine hulls. The final chapter in U-55's history was penned in Chicago, where it became the Museum of Science and Industry's most popular exhibit. However, its journey from a captured enemy vessel to a museum centerpiece was an epic tale deserving recognition. Following the war's conclusion, U-505 sat deteriorating at Portsmouth Naval Yard for 9 years. stripped bare by souvenir hunters and Navy personnel seeking spare parts. By 1953, almost nothing remained of her interior equipment. Technology was reduced to a rusting steel hull. The Navy's plan was straightforward and definitive: use U-505 for target practice until it sank. Upon learning this, Admiral Gallery was horrified. He immediately contacted his brother, Father John Ireland Gallery, who had become an influential figure in Chicago civic affairs. Father Gallery then approached Lenox Law, president of the Museum of Science and Industry, with a bold proposition. Laura found the idea intriguing but doubted its feasibility. Transporting U-505 from Portsmouth Naval Yard in New Hampshire to Chicago would require passage through the St. Lawrence Seaway, which could not accommodate such a vessel's dimensions. The submarine needed to be towed along the Atlantic coast, through the Caribbean Sea, and up the Mississippi River to reach the Great Lakes. In 1954, the cost estimate was $2,500,000, which is equivalent to over $2 million in today's currency. Chicago greeted this endeavor with exceptional excitement. School children contributed their nickels and dimes, labor unions offered free services, and corporate sponsors vied to fund various restoration projects. The city that had dispatched thousands of sailors to battle in the Atlantic was determined to safeguard a tangible symbol of victory it had helped secure. Veterans brought their children, and former Rosie, the riveters who had constructed Liberty ships, touched the hull of an enemy vessel they had helped defeat. German-American communities sent delegations, experiencing a mix of pride in German engineering and relief that such weaponry was now relegated to museums. Despite these overwhelming demonstrations of support, the restoration task appeared daunting. His letter to each company was uniform: "We have your submarine. It will be displayed for millions to see. Would you prefer it to symbolize German engineering at its pinnacle or remain an empty shell?" The reaction surpassed all expectations. Mannheim Diesel furnished comprehensive engine rebuilding instructions and spare parts, while Zeiss supplied new periscope optics. Siemens contributed electrical components, and AEG provided motor control systems. Each company conveyed the same message: "We regret that you possess our submarine, but if it must be there, it should showcase German technical prowess." Notably, every contribution was made free of charge. Over 20 million visitors have toured the sub that refused to sink in the gallery. School children learn about the war's history by exploring its confined spaces. Veterans bring their grandchildren to see where historical events took place. The submarine has hosted numerous ceremonies, ranging from naturalization services for new Americans to re-enlistment ceremonies for sailors continuing their service. In 1989, U-505. The citation recognized not only its role in the war, but also its unique status as a bridge between former adversaries. What had once been built to destroy American shipping now stands as an American monument. Crew members who served under Nazi rule have become advocates for democracy. A capture that nearly led to court-martial has transformed into a testament to creative courage. The technical advancements discovered aboard U-505 influenced submarine design globally. American engineers dedicated several months to meticulously documenting every system, producing blueprints that would shape submarine design in the United States for decades to come. One groundbreaking feature was the snorkel system, which permitted diesel engines to operate while the submarine remained submerged. This technology did not exist in American submarines at the time. The German version could extend up to 40 feet above the hull and included float valves that automatically sealed when waves covered the intake. This advancement alone increased underwater endurance from mere hours to days. Another revelation was the torpedo data computer housed in U-505's conning tower, which could calculate firing solutions for multiple targets simultaneously by factoring in target speed, direction, submarine motion, and ocean currents. In contrast, American fire control systems were far less sophisticated. Improved fire control systems based on German innovations began equipping American submarines operating in the Pacific Theater. However, perhaps the most significant discovery was the submarine's acoustic dampening technology. The hull interior of U-505 was lined with a synthetic rubber compound known as albric, named after a dwarf from Wagner's Ring Cycle who could become invisible. Additionally, American engineers were impressed by the hydraulic torpedo loading systems, which allowed for rapid reloading of all 4 forward tubes in under 10 minutes, half the time required by U.S. designs. This was made possible thanks to a novel hydraulic ram capable of functioning at any depth without encountering pressure equalization issues that plagued American systems. Another area of interest was the battery technology aboard U-505, which consisted of 2 sets of sextinosity aboard U-505 which consisted of 2 sets in 100 horsepower when operating submerged. Yet it was the battery maintenance and ventilation systems that truly impressed the American engineers. The Germans had created advanced hydrogen detection and ventilation systems that prevented explosions from accumulating within their submarines, which had previously devastated several American vessels. U-505's deck storage revealed a capability that the Americans were unaware Germany possessed. This T5 Zankonig or Wren model could detect the sound of ship propellers from over 6 miles away and distinguish between merchant ships and warships based on propeller cavitation patterns during initial tests. Although the Americans had been working on similar technology, they lagged behind by several years. Within weeks of analyzing the captured torpedo, American scientists developed countermeasures that would protect numerous ships in the final year of the war. Intelligence officers found equipment aboard U-505 that was unfamiliar to them. A device labeled KUA turned out to be a burst transmission system capable of compressing long messages into sub-second broadcasts, too brief for direction. Finding equipment to pinpoint. The codebooks disclosed German innovations in communication security that surpassed Allied expectations. Germans employed a system of daily changing grid references encrypted with both daily keys and large RAM tables, making messages unreadable without these additional layers, even if intercepted by Enigma machines. The material seized from U-505 provided the Allies with the tools needed to decode real-time German naval communications for the remainder of the war. Gowrie passed away on January 16, 1977, at age 75, and his funeral was attended by former enemies and allies alike, including several former crew members of U-505 who traveled from Germany to pay their respects. Harold Lang sent a wreath with a plow that read, "Sixers' simple message to the captain who spared our lives and showed us honor in defeat." The capture of U-505 remains one of the most extraordinary episodes of World War II, not for being a decisive victory, but for representing a different kind of triumph. In a war marked by total destruction, Gowrie chose capture over annihilation. Amid a conflict that fostered enmity towards adversaries, he demonstrated respect toward those who were defeated. During a battle where adhering to commands ensured victory, he took an unprecedented risk on a bold gamble. Each rivet, valve, and gauge bears witness to its journey of transformation, constructed for annihilation, captured through defiance, and preserved through unwavering resolve. It serves as evidence that sometimes the most significant triumphs stem not from destroying enemies but from understanding them, not from obeying orders without question, but from recognizing when those orders must be challenged. The tale of U-505 centers on a captain's decision to prioritize intelligence over destruction, proving that capturing an adversary can achieve what killing cannot. That disobeying in the name of a greater cause could turn a routine mission into history. Gowrie's daring move, David's bravery, and the survival of 58 German sailors created a legacy that goes beyond warfare. They showed that enemies can become allies, intelligence can prevail over force, and sometimes the most courageous actions involve preserving rather than destroying. The impact of U-55's capture extended well into the Cold War era, when American submarine tactics were influenced by lessons learned from this German vessel. Capturing enemy technology became a priority, shaping special operations training. Navy SEAL teams received specific instruction on boarding submarines based on David's detailed reports after the operation. Every subsequent attempt to seize an enemy submarine since 1944 has referenced the U-55 submission for guidance. In 1968, when the Soviet submarine K-129 sank in the Pacific with nuclear missiles and codebooks, the CIA's recovery effort, Project Azorian, drew inspiration from Gallery's success. Howard Hughes's Glomar Explorer, constructed for this retrieval, incorporated equipment designed according to lessons learned from U-505. Despite partial success, the mission yielded critical intelligence on Soviet nuclear capabilities. The human legacy endured just as strongly. Numerous crew members of U-505 kept in touch with their American captors throughout their lives. One such individual was Hans Guler, who had shut off critical valves during the submarine's final moments and moved to America in 1956. He worked at the Museum of Science and Industry as a guide on his former vessel. Tourists were fascinated to hear first-hand accounts from someone who had lived aboard the submarine. During these tours, Gobello would stand in the engine room where he had nearly perished and remark to visitors, "This submarine was built to kill Americans. Now it educates them." This metamorphosis, from weapon of war to an educational tool, represents a genuine triumph. By fostering comprehension, the preservation of U-55 also had significant impacts on international maritime laws. The 1958 Geneva Convention on the High Seas included clauses specifically dealing with captured vessels, largely inspired by legal debates surrounding U-55. A submarine that once violated neutrality, attacked civilian ships, and served a nefarious regime inadvertently helped to fortify global naval regulations. The acoustic torpedo technology directly influenced the development of the Mark 48 torpedo, which remains the primary weapon for American submarines today. Additionally, the snorkel system evolved into advanced air-independent propulsion systems. The burst communication method paved the way for submarine satellite communications. Each American submarine launched since 1945 bears technical heritage from the captured German vessel. Intelligence professionals still regard the U-505 capture as a prime example of operational security. Gallery's ability to maintain strict secrecy among 3,000 sailors regarding one of the war's most dramatic captures is renowned in intelligence communities. The FBI conducted an investigation into how Gallery achieved this feat and concluded that his blend of patriotic zeal, rigorous discipline, and exceptional leadership fostered a culture of tactical silence that set a benchmark for classified missions. The Museum of Science and Industry has recorded that more than 40,000 veterans have brought their families to visit U-505, using this submarine as a tool to share their wartime experiences with younger generations who lack first-hand knowledge. Veterans from the Korean War highlight advancements spurred by German engineering, while those from the Vietnam era discuss how acoustic stealth techniques saved lives. Gulf War veterans detail how insights derived from U-55 shaped contemporary submarine warfare tactics. Each successive generation discovers a new significance in this 70-year-old vessel. Educational initiatives based on U-55 have educated over 5 million students, transforming it into a platform for teaching subjects ranging from history to science and engineering. Visitors who initially arrive with thoughts of war leave the facility contemplating topics such as hydrostatic pressure, electrical systems, and mechanical design. Teachers often note that no classroom lecture can match the profound impact of standing inside the submarine, where significant historical events took place. In 2004, a $35 million restoration project was completed to relocate U-55 indoors to safeguard it from Chicago's severe weather conditions. The logistics involved in moving an 800-ton vessel underground, without disassembling it, were formidable and required innovative lifting techniques that pushed the boundaries of heavy lifting technology. Even during its preservation phase, U-505 continued to inspire engineering advancements. By 2005, U-505 had been reinstalled in a climate-controlled, underground exhibition space, allowing visitors to experience a comprehensive narrative from its construction through capture and conservation. Interactive exhibits enable guests to encode messages using an authentic Enigma machine, while periscopes offer views of Chicago's skyline. Sound effects recreate the harrowing experience of depth charge attacks. The submarine, once a hunter in the dark depths of the ocean, now serves as an educational beacon. Veterans from both navies continue to make pilgrimages to U-505, and in 2019, the last surviving member of Galler's task group, Raymond Thompson, at 96 years old, visited with his great-grandchildren. Where Albert David had fallen through the hatch, Thompson spoke up and said, "We didn't just seize a submarine, we secured knowledge that saved thousands of lives." Every merchant sailor who returned home due to our ability to decipher German communications, every convoy that evaded wolf packs because we knew their locations, all owe something to what transpired here. The German viewpoint is equally compelling. Descendants of U-505 crew members frequently visit the site in search of a connection with fathers and grandfathers they never met. In 2018, Harold Lang's grandson donated his grandfather's personal belongings to the museum, including letters that were written but never sent while he was in secret confinement. One letter to his wife read, "If you receive this, know I survived not because of bravery, but due to the mercy shown by enemies who proved more honorable than those who dispatched us to certain death." Today, U-505 stands as the sole surviving Type I Nux submarine from its era. Or its sister ships are either lying at the bottom of oceans or were scrapped long ago. The intelligence gained had significant value during the war, though it became obsolete once peace was declared. Similarly, the technical advancements were eventually surpassed. However, the human narrative, the transformation from enemies into friends, the preservation of knowledge instead of its destruction, and the courage to defy wrong orders for the sake of right action remains eternal. Where Albert David chose bravery over safety, and Harold Lang chose life over death. This is where Daniel Gallery opted for capture instead of killing. Here, 58 German sailors and 3,000 American sailors maintained a secret that saved countless lives. Enemies turned into mentors, and their weapons became learning tools. The submarine's motto, painted on its conning tower during construction, read "Oder Unang, success or destruction." Instead, U-505 embarked on an unexpected journey of transformation, from predator to prey, from instrument of war to monument, and from adversary to teacher. In this metamorphosis lies a profound message: understanding triumphs over enmity, preservation outlasts obliteration, and sometimes the most significant victory is choosing not to destroy what others insist must be sunk.